بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وآله وصحبه وسلم اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم صل على محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم أما بعد. Respected brothers and honorable sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Very nice to see all of you tonight, and welcome to tonight's lesson, which inshallah will be the first in a series of lessons about the blessed Imams and heroes of Islam. We ask Allah to bless this series of lectures and to make it beneficial for us and for the Ummah, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And first of all, the topic of speaking about the great heroes and Imams is a very important topic, because we need our heroes and our Imams to be role models for us, to be examples who we can follow in their footsteps, so that we can learn from their nobility, their character. Today we're more in need of good examples than we are of many other things. We really need good examples that we can aspire to be like them, and that they can be heroes for us, and especially for our youth. Because many of the children, many of the youth, they look for corrupt people as role models and heroes. Those other people that don't have any contribution to Islam or to history or to life or to society, they look up to these other people who have no significance in the history of Islam and the spread of Islam. So it's important to learn about these great personalities, these great shakhsiyat, so that we can emulate them. We can get inspiration from the sacrifices they made, and how much they gave for the cause of Islam, how sincere they were in giving up for the afterlife, for the hereafter. So inshallah tonight, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we ask Allah to bless this lesson. It is about one of the great shining sons of knowledge, one of the four great Imams, the Mujtahid Imams, and one of the very great scholars who filled the earth with knowledge. And in fact, even today we benefit from the knowledge that he spread. The dars today, insha'Allah ta'ala, is about the great Imam Abdullah ibn Idris ash-Shafii. Abdullah ibn Idris ash-Shafii. Imam ash-Shafii, rahimahullah, he was born in the town of Gaza in Palestine, according to the strongest view. Some ulama say that it was in Asqalan, which is also in Palestine. And he was born in the year 150 after Hijrah, the same year that Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah passed away. Imam Shafi'i was born the same year that Imam Abu Hanifa passed away, 150 after Hijrah. And Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, he was born to a very poor family. His father passed away when he was young, so he was an orphan. And his mother, she was very careful about him. She wanted him to learn the knowledge that her ancestors had, because Imam Shafi'i, he is from the Quraysh, he's Qurashi, and he's actually from Banu Hashim, the same tribe as the Prophet ﷺ. Hashim, the ancestor of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he migrated to Sham, to Syria, in Palestine, to do trading. And it said that over there he had some children, and that was where the lineage that Imam Shafi'i, he came from that lineage. And so Imam Shafi'i, his mother, when he was 2 years old, his mother took him to Mecca, because she wanted him to be in a good environment where he can reconnect to his roots and learn the Arabic language and learn from the scholars of Mecca. So at the age of 2, of course he was an orphan, she went with him without his father, Idris, and she brought him to Mecca. And he started living there and living amongst the Muslims there. And the mother, there's some interesting stories about when he was a child. The mother was so concerned about Imam ash-Shafii, but she wanted to send him to the teachers to learn. But she didn't have enough money. Usually orphans, the orphans usually they grow up in a poor family. So she didn't have a lot of money to pay the teachers. But interestingly, the tutors, when they met with Imam Shafii as a little boy, they saw how brilliant he was, how intelligent he was, that they offered to take him as a student, and sometimes they would write the lesson on the board, and the little Imam Shafii, he would memorize the lesson before the teacher even got time to explain it. And so the teachers would say, how can we take money for teaching Shafi'i when we didn't even teach him? We just wrote the lesson on the board, he already memorized it. So how we didn't teach him? We're just writing it. Before we finished writing it, he already learned it. I didn't have to teach him anything. So some of the teachers, they said, how can we get paid for teaching? He's learning himself, he's memorizing himself. And another story, another narration about Imam Shafii, they didn't have money to pay his teachers, so the teachers they asked Imam Shafii to be their assistant teacher. Because he was so brilliant, he would learn the lesson and then the teacher would go home and Imam Shafii would take over and teach the rest of the students. So he acted as the assistant to his teachers. This is at a very young age, before he reached puberty. And then his mother, rahimahullah, something about his mother. Imam Shafii's mother was also very, very deeply knowledgeable in faqih. And they mentioned, some of the students, they mention about it, that his mother was in Mecca, she was asked to give witnessing in court for a business transaction. So the ruler of Mecca, the judge, he brought Imam Shafii's wife to the court. And he told her, there was one male witness and two female witnesses. Because when you have witnessing in Islam, either two males or one male and two females. So they asked her and the other woman to give witness. But the judge, he said to Imam Shafii's mother, you go in a separate room, I'm going to take your witnessing and then we'll bring the other woman and bring her witnessing to see how they match up. So what did Imam Shafii's mother say? She said, no, this is not right, you can't do that. The judge said, why not? She said, in the Quran Allah says, أَن تَدِلَّ إِحْدَاهُمَا فَتُذَكِّرْ إِحْدَاهُمَا الْأُخْرَى. If one of the women forgets, the other woman can remind her. So their witnessing has to be together, not separate. So the judge was amazed, and she had the correct rule, the fiqh of that issue, and she proved the judge to be wrong in that issue. So if we see that Imam Shafii's mother was so brilliant and had so much fiqh and understanding, we can imagine how this would affect his Imam Shafii, coming from such a family, Qurashi family, Banu Hashim. The mother was so knowledgeable and so righteous. And they say about Imam Shafii also that he memorized the entire Quran by the age of 7 years old. And in fact, in those days, the age of 7, they were very prodigious. They used to memorize, many of them, by the age of 7 years old. And as he got older, Imam Shafii, he heard about Imam Malik. Imam Shafii, he was a student of Malik, and he was the teacher of Imam Ahmad. But when he was in Mecca, Imam Shafii was in Mecca, he heard about Imam Malik, who was where? Where was Imam Malik? In Medina. And Imam Malik rarely left Medina. So Imam Shafii, he was a little boy, and Imam Malik was a huge najm. He was a huge star at that time, huge scholar. You could say that his knowledge was spreading on the earth. So Imam Shafii, he said, I want to go to Medina to go and learn from Imam Malik. But before he did that, his mother had him stay with the Arab tribes. She wanted him to learn pure Arabic. So in Mecca, he stayed with the tribes of the Hudayl tribe, which is a very eloquent tribe. The Arab tribes, they have very good Arabic. So Imam Malik, he stayed with Hudayl, and he says that he memorized 10,000 lines of poetry from the Hudayl tribe. Their poetry was very eloquent poetry in the Arabs. And so he said, I stayed with them, I went on the journeys with them, I memorized 10,000 lines of poetry from them. And he became very, very fasih, very, very eloquent. And later on in his life, we find that the linguists, they used to come and attend Imam Malik's halaqas. The linguists, like the grammarians, they used to come to his halaqah. And so the fiqh students, they say, why are you here? You don't study fiqh. You're studying language. They said, we came to hear the words of Shafii because he's so eloquent. Whatever he says, we learn the grammar from it. And it's narrated that Imam Shafii, he never made a corruption in grammar in his whole life. His entire life, there's no corruption in his Arabic grammar. He never made lahan. So he was like a hujjah. He was a proof. His words were a proof in the Arabic grammar. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. So in also Abdul Malik ibn Hisham, he was one of the great biographers. You might have heard of the seerah of Ibn Hisham. He was one of the biographers of the Prophet ﷺ. He came from Egypt to learn from Imam Shafii. And he was also a grammarian. He was a great scholar of grammar. Right, Brother Salah? He was a great scholar of Arabic grammar. So he said, I came to learn from Imam Shafi'i Arabic grammar. And he said, I never imagined that such a human being existed. He said, I never imagined that a human being like this, who's so eloquent in Arabic, existed on the earth. He didn't imagine that. So another grammarian, how he appreciated the language of Imam Shafi'i. And also the people, they would Rabi'a ibn Sulaiman, who was a student of Imam Shafi'i, he says that Imam Shafi'i, when he debated people, he was so eloquent in his grammar and his language that if he had written his books like that, nobody could understand his books. He was too eloquent. So he says that he would write his books, he would simplify the language so that people could understand it. He was too eloquent and too very, very skilled in Arabic language. And Imam Shafi'i, he says himself, if poetry was something valuable, I could aspire to be the greatest poet. Easily he could have been. But he wanted to focus on fiqh and on knowledge and on Quran and hadith. That was more important, more valuable to him. And he realized that this was more greater in the sight of Allah. And of course, Shafi'i, at the age of 15, the scholars of Mecca, they gave Imam Shafi'i the permission to give fatwa. They said that you have enough knowledge, and this is Sufyan ibn Uyayna, he was the main Imam of Mecca, the great scholar of Mecca. He tells Imam Shafi'i, he says, you're ready to give fatwa, you can issue fatawa. So 15 years old. And so he left, at that point he left for Medina to go meet the great Imam, Imam Malik. He wanted to go and study under him. Although he was already approved for fatwa, he went and he got a letter from the ruler of Mecca saying to the ruler of Medina, this is how they would do things in those days, that I'm sending you Imam Shafi'i. So please have Imam Malik accept him as a student. He had the letter in his hand. So Imam Shafi'i, he arrived in Medina and he gave the letter to the ruler of Medina. The ruler read the letter, said, please have Imam Shafi'i learn from Imam Malik. And subhanAllah, look at the maqam, the status of ulama in those days. The ruler of Medina was too afraid to ask Imam Malik. He said, I wish you didn't give me this letter. I don't want to ask him. He said, why not? He said, I don't know, he's not going to accept. I'm not sure if he's going to accept, and I'm afraid to ask him, too shy to ask him. But Imam Shafi'i insisted. He said, why don't you tell Imam Malik to come here? Imam Malik, you don't want to go to his house? Maybe we can ask him to visit us here. So finally the ruler, he relented. He said, let's go. We'll go to Imam Malik's house. So they went to the house of Imam Malik. They knocked on the door. The ruler of Medina, and Imam Shafi'i is with him. So the servant girl of Imam Malik, she comes to the door. What do you want? So the ruler, he says, we came to see Imam Malik. Can he come and speak with us? So she left. She didn't tell him that he had a letter from the ruler of Mecca as well. So the girl went, she asked Imam, she stayed a long time. She came back after some time. She said, Imam Malik, he says, if you want to ask a question, I can come. But if you want to learn hadith, wait for me in the masjid. So then they sent back to him. They said, yes, we need to talk to him. It's very important. So Imam Malik, he put his full dress on, because whenever he narrated hadith, he would always wear his best clothing. And that was something he was well known for. He came out in his nice, beautiful dress, and the servant girl brought a chair, and he sat down. So he said, yes, what is the need? So they handed him the letter from the ruler of Mecca. He said, here's the letter. The ruler of Mecca, and then he read it. This is Shafi'i, he wants you to let him study with you. So Imam Malik, he threw the letter. He said, do you think hadith is taken by these letters? You think this is how you get knowledge, by letters from the rulers? So the ruler of Medina got scared. He didn't want to say anything. He felt shot, and now he felt really embarrassed that he disturbed Imam Malik, and he gave him the letter. Imam Malik didn't even appreciate the letter at all. So then Imam Shafi'i started talking to Imam Malik. He said, oh great Imam, I want to learn from you. I want to study your hadith. By the way, Imam Shafi'i, when he set out for Medina, he memorized the Muwatta. The Muwatta is the book of Imam Shafi'i. It's a large book of hadith. He memorized it in 9 days. The entire book, he memorized it in 9 days. So he came and he started speaking with Imam Malik. Imam Malik asked him a few questions, and Imam Malik realized. He said, this is a good student. He said, come to the masjid, to my halaqah. Bring somebody who can read the Muwatta with you, because he thought he's too little. Bring somebody who can read the Muwatta with you, and you can sit with me and I'll listen to you. So Imam Shafi'i, he went to the masjid, he read the Muwatta himself, and Imam Malik was very, very happy, very pleased with him, and he stayed with Imam Malik for some time. He was at this age, he was only 17 years old. He was only 17 years old. So then Imam Shafi'i, he returned after studying from Imam Malik. He returned back to where? Make sure you're awake, right? Yes? He was in Medina. He was studying with Imam Malik in Medina. He finished learning from Imam Malik. Where did he go back? Where was his hometown? Where his mother was? No. His mother brought him to Mecca. Yes, his mother brought him to Mecca, and that's where he grew up, and that's where he stayed with the Arab tribes. So he came back to Mecca. As soon as he came back, they told him to start doing halaqas in the haram. So he started having his classes in the haram. Sufyan ibn Uyayna, he was the main scholar of Mecca, and Imam Shafi'i was the young one growing up, but he started his own halaqah. So what they mentioned, that Imam Ahmad, he came, come kids. Imam Ahmad, he came from Iraq. He wanted to study, and so he came. They used to come for Hajj. The ulama would come for Hajj, and they would also come to seek knowledge. So Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he was even younger than Shafi'i. He came from Iraq, and he wanted to sit with Sufyan ibn Uyayna, who's the main scholar of Mecca. So Sufyan ibn Uyayna, he says, go and sit with Shafi'i. So Imam Ahmad, he says, why? I want to learn from you. You're the main sheikh. He says, if you miss some hadith from me, you can get it from somebody else. But if you miss Imam Shafi'i, you will never get it from anybody else. You miss the knowledge of Shafi'i, you cannot make up for it. So he was praised by the great scholars of Mecca. So then Imam Shafi'i, after this, in his travels, Imam Shafi'i had 3 main travels in his life. He traveled, of course he went to Medina, studied from Imam Malik. He also traveled to Yemen, and he was given a position as a ruler in Yemen. So he went to Yemen and he taught people there. He had a position, and during that time some people accused him of something false, and this they claimed that he supported some Shiite rebels there. So this reached so Harun al-Rashid, he demanded Imam Shafii to come to Baghdad. And so he was chained up and he was brought to Baghdad in chains. So Imam Shafii, they brought him there, and he was waiting. He didn't meet with Harun al-Rashid. He was kept somewhere there, and he had the opportunity to meet Muhammad ibn Hassan ash-Shaybani, one of the students of Imam Abu Hanifa. So they learned from each other. They read, actually, Imam Shafii, he read to Muhammad ibn Hassan ash-Shaybani, and they benefited from each other's company during that time. They debated and they learned from each other. And finally they had a chance. During this time, the people in Baghdad started becoming aware of Imam Shafii. They realized his knowledge and his brilliance. So when he went to Harun al-Rashid, Harun al-Rashid was so impressed with Imam Shafii. Not only he didn't give him any punishment, he sent him back, he praised him, and he sent him back to go back to Mecca and to be one of the teachers there. He honored him and he respected him and loved him so much, because he saw how brilliant he was. So after this time, Imam Shafii, he finished his time in Yemen. He made the next journey of his life. The next journey of his life was when he went to Iraq to be a teacher there. And so when he arrived in Iraq, the ulama, they surrounded him. The second time he went to Iraq 3 times. First time was in chains. The second time, the ulama surrounded him. They all came to learn from him, and they were very, very much pleased with Imam Shafii, and they became very devoted students to him. It's mentioned on some of these journeys, very interesting anecdote. They say one time Imam Shafii, he was traveling back to Mecca. They talk about the firasa of Imam Shafii. Firasa is a science where they call it insight, where in the Prophet ﷺ he said that some Muslims, some people, Allah gives them the nur of Allah, they have insight. So Imam Shafii, he was traveling back, he had so much brilliance, intelligence, he had knowledge, he had wara, and these are all things that give firasa. Everybody know what firasa is? Everybody familiar what firasa is? Firasa is like when you can see Allah gives some light, some knowledge in the heart based on the expressions of the face or some sounds. It's like they call it insight or deep understanding. That it's something that Allah gives in the heart of a believer, some knowledge that he feels in his heart about something. It's not something it's written in books, but it comes in the heart. So Imam Shafii, he had all the qualities. He had the intelligence, he had the knowledge, he had the piety. So they said he was one of the most famous people of firasa. He could see many signs and things. So they just mentioned a story. On his way back, he had to stop somewhere to take some rest. So there was a man, and the signs, the firasa that he saw, that this was a very evil man. It's a very evil person. And there's even a science to it. They said he shaved his beard and some other things, but Imam Shafii said this should be an evil person. But the man invited him to his house. The host, he said to Imam Shafii, come to my house, stay tonight. He made food for him. He gave food for his animal and water. He let him, took care of him. All of these generous things. So Imam Shafii, he was very puzzled. He said, this is, the signs that I'm seeing, this is a very evil person, but look at all these nice things he's doing. So the next morning, Imam Shafii gets up, he's about to leave with his animal, and the man, he says, where are you going, Shafii? He said, what do you mean? I'm done with the journey, I'm on my way. Thank you for hosting me, and Jazakallah khair for all your kindness. Then the host said, you didn't pay your bill. He said, what do you mean? He said, you stayed the night, you have to pay 3 dirhams for staying the night. You ate food, you have to pay for this. And you took water for your animal, you took food for your horse. you have to pay for all these things. You owe me this many dirhams. So Imam Shafii, he gave him the money. He said, here's the money, Jazakallah khair. And he said, thank you very much. Now I know that the insight was right. I realized what the signs were showing me. And this happened again to Imam Shafii. And he mentioned, there's many stories mentioned about this. I said he was in the company of Muhammad Shaybani, and a man walked in. So Shafii and Muhammad Shaybani, they said to each other, let's try to use the firasa. Who is this man? Neither of them knew the man before. So let's see his expressions, maybe we can guess. Who is he? They were testing each other maybe, or just talking with each other. So Imam Shafii, he says, I think he's a carpenter. And then Imam Muhammad Shaybani, he says, I think he's a tailor. So when the man came, they asked him, they said, what do you do for a living? So he said, I used to be a carpenter, but now I'm a tailor. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him some beautiful insights into things. So Imam Shafii, he gathered much knowledge, and one of the greatest sciences that he developed, it's amazing, the science of usul al-fiqh. Usul al-fiqh is like the rules. How do you get the rulings from the Quran and Sunnah? Right? You heard of that, Brother Salah? Usul al-fiqh? Yes. Imam, who founded the science of usul al-fiqh? The Shafi'i. Yes. Imam Shafi'i, he's considered the founder of usul al-fiqh. And what's amazing, his book, do you know what it's called in usul al-fiqh? Ar-Risala. Ar-Risala means the letter. And actually the book, the Risala, which is considered the greatest book, one of the foundational books in Usul al-Fiqh, it was a letter that he wrote to one of his students. Subhanallah. And a lot of the books of Imam Shafii, they were letters that he wrote to his students. And later on they compiled it. So Imam Shafii, he wrote this letter to, I think his name was Al-Muzani from Egypt. It was Abdul Rahman al-Mahdi. Abdul Rahman al-Mahdi was a scholar, and he asked Imam Shafii, can you please write me a letter? I want to know about the usul al-fiqh. Tell me everything you know about how to derive rulings. So Imam Shafii, he wrote the letter. They call it a kitab. It became one of the greatest books ever written in usul al-fiqh. Just a letter he wrote back to his student. And Imam al-Muzani, who was a student of Imam Shafii, he said, I read the Risala, the book of Imam Shafii, I read it 500 times. 500 times, over a period of 50 years. And he said, every time I read Risala, I learned something new. I got some new benefit from it. SubhanAllah, how much blessing that Imam Shafii had in his writing. May Allah bless him and have mercy on his soul. Imam Shafii, he stood up strongly against innovations, against the bid'ah and the hawa and the innovations. And people admired him in this. And one of the things that is amazing about the life of Shafii, he was able to combine knowledge of hadith with qiyas, which is sound reasoning. And they say that the people, the muhaddithin, they were busy compiling hadith, but they didn't have the knowledge of the fiqh, or they didn't have the ability to derive the rulings. So Imam Shafii, rahimahullah, he was able to join the knowledge of narration of hadith, but he also had the fiqh. Because many narrators, they were so busy memorizing hadith, they didn't have a chance to learn fiqh. So Imam Shafii, he was able to combine both of these great sciences together. And that's one of his great contributions. It's also said about Imam Shafii, when his time with Imam Ahmad, Imam Shafii came to visit Imam Ahmad. Imam Ahmad, again, he was in Baghdad, and Imam Ahmad's father was sick. There's a story narrated. So Imam Shafii, he went to visit Imam Ahmad, rahmatullah alayhima. And so Imam Ahmad's father. So Imam Ahmad, when he saw Shafii, he kissed Imam Shafii on his head, and then he sat by his feet, out of respect. You see somebody like Imam Ahmad, such a great scholar, this is how much respect he had for Imam Shafii. He kissed his forehead and sat next to his feet. And then when Imam Shafii was leaving, Imam Ahmad came and he walked by his mule to help him onto his mule. So one of the students of Imam Ahmad, Yahya ibn Mu'in, he didn't like that Imam Ahmad is walking on the side of a donkey. He said, do you have to walk by the side of the donkey of Imam Shafii? Is that appropriate? Yahya ibn Mu'in. So Imam Ahmad said back to him, he said, if you want fiqh, then stand by the tail of the donkey of Imam Shafii. This is how you're going to get fiqh. If you want to learn, this is what you have to do. Even go by the tail, not the side. He had so much respect for Imam ash-Shafii, rahmatullah alayhi. Also, Imam Ahmad, he used to pray a lot for Imam Shafii. That was his teacher, right? So Imam Ahmad, he used to pray all the time for his teacher. And this is a good thing, of course, right? We should always pray for our teachers. But he mentioned his teacher so much that his son, the son of Imam Ahmad, you know what his name was? Imam Ahmad's son, he had a famous son. Abdullah, that's right. Abdullah, he said to his father, Imam Ahmad, why do you always pray for Imam Shafii? We hear you all the time, Shafii, 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 praying for him. So Imam Shafii, he said, for 50 years, I pray, in every prayer I pray for Shafii. And every night I pray for Imam Shafii. In every night prayer I pray for him. This is how much he loved his teacher and how much he benefited from him. 40 years, Now, Imam Shafii, the other book that you mentioned, Brother Salah, was the which is another one of his great works that compiled fiqh in one of his books. Imam Shafii, after he went to Iraq, his third journey. First one was where? First journey was to Yemen, the main journey, not if you don't include Medina. The second journey was to Baghdad. The third journey of Imam Shafii was where? Egypt. That was his third major journey. So Imam Shafii, on his way to Egypt, when he went to Egypt, this was when he was in the year 199. He was about 49 years old. He passed away when he was 54. Rahimahullah. SubhanAllah, such a short life with so many accomplishments. So he went to Egypt when he was 49 years old, the year 199 Hijri. When he arrived in Egypt, there was two major schools of law. There was the Maliki school of law and the Hanafi school of law. But the people there, the Imam Shafii, he said, when he arrived in Egypt, he said, I want to join the people, these two schools of law, to bring them together. And the students there, they wanted to go and find out who is Imam Shafii. We heard about him, but many of them were students of Imam Malik and very, very strictly devoted to Imam Malik. So they came and they watched Shafii. And so one of them, he describes Imam Shafii, like what he saw. And he said, when I saw him, he was the best person in prayer. He was so devoted in his salah, so much in his salah. And when he met the people, his face was the most beautiful, the most radiant, when he dealt with the people. And when he spoke, the words were the most eloquent and the most perfect. So much knowledge. So he combined the devotion and prayer and a beautiful face, beautiful akhlaq, and beautiful language and speech. He said nobody had a better speech than Imam Shafii, rahimahullah. Also, they say about Imam Shafii, one of the things he says, when I arrived in Egypt, I saw that people, they had got a turban of Imam Malik, and they loved that. They were starting to kiss the turban and get barakah from it. So he said, I wanted to have some teach them some other views, some other juristic opinions, so they wouldn't be so fanatical in their love of Imam Malik. Even though he loved Imam Malik, it was his teacher, but he wanted to show some different views, just so that people don't have that overarching devotion, or not devotion, but overarching love where they're kissing the turban, which would not be appropriate. So two of the famous students of Imam Shafii are Al-Muzani and Al-Bahuti in Egypt, and they were the ones, many of them, they spread his books, his letters, they compiled it, And when Imam Shafii, those last 5 years, were very blessed years, was in Egypt, students came from the Hijaz, Saudi Arabia today. They came from Iraq, they came from Sham. They all used to come to learn from Imam ash-Shafii in Egypt. And he's buried there. That's where he died. And he's still very, very highly respected over there. Some last points, some things about the great character of Imam Shafii, some things that we learn about him. One of the things, when he was dying, one of his students came to him, and he said on his deathbed, he said it in poetry, he spoke very eloquently, but in English, he said, I am leaving the dunya behind. I am parting way from my friends. I am drinking the cup of death, and I am going to meet my sins. I don't know if my destiny will be in paradise and my soul will meet reward, or if my soul will end up in the fire and will meet its punishment. This is what he said about himself, on his deathbed, rahimahullah ta'ala. Imam Shafi'i, he strived to close the doors of innovation, such as the Rafida, the extreme people who cursed the Sahaba. He didn't like philosophy, the Greek philosophy. He was opposed to the Khalq al-Quran, that fitna that was happening. And another amazing story, or another narration about Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah. Everybody with me? I want to make sure everybody's aware, inshallah, awake. Very beautiful story. Imam Shafi'i, they said that when he went to the masjid after Fajr, the students of the Quran would come to him right after Fajr. They would come to him. Then they would leave after he was done teaching them Quran. And then the students of Hadith would come. And they would sit with Imam Shafi'i. And they would learn so much from him. And then they would leave. And then the linguists would come. The people who wanted to study the Arabic language. They would come and they would learn from him. And then they would have a group of people come and study fiqh with him. And they would debate and the masail, the different matters of fiqh, all the way until noontime. So all of these groups of students of the Quran, students of hadith, students of fiqh, students of Arabic language, they would come in groups. Each one would come and learn and go home, enlightened with so much knowledge. This is all before Dhuhr. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. May Allah have mercy on Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah. Some of the statements about Imam Shafi'i, some of his wise sayings. He had so many beautiful and wise sayings. Did anybody hear any of the beautiful sayings of Imam Shafi'i? Have you heard them before? Don't remember any of them? Okay, we'll mention a couple of them, inshallah. One of the statements, a beautiful statement, he said, Imam Shafi'i, he says, I wish that the knowledge that I have written in books was spread without people knowing my name. He said, I wish this knowledge, I wish people, that all these books, I wish people learned it and it spread, but they didn't know who my name was. Because he wanted to be so sincere for the sake of Allah. He didn't want any showing off in any riyah. Rahimahullah. Another beautiful statement, it shows you his good noble character, his good akhlaq. He said, whenever I would debate with people, I would always pray to Allah. When he's talking to them, he would pray to Allah, oh Allah, allow the truth to come from him. Allow the truth to come on his tongue. Because his goal, it wasn't to prove that he was right. He just wanted the truth to be known, and if it came from the opponent, then that would be more readily accepted. So he used to pray for that. It shows you the purity of his heart and his soul. It's very difficult to speak about these great Imams. Comparing myself, it's hard to even try to speak about them, because there were so far between us, me and they. But may Allah allow us to follow their example, inshallah. Imam Shafi'i, another thing that he said, and this is again one of the things that he did actually in a debate. There was somebody named Ibn Yunus, and he was debating him, and then they differed. So Imam Shafi'i, he took him by the hand and he held his hand, And he said, even if we differ, can't we be brothers? He said, yes, we differed on this issue, but let's at least be brothers in Islam. They had a debate, they didn't agree. But he said, he told them by his hand, and he told them, let us be brothers with one another. See, today if we differ on some issue, each person goes home, they're angry, cursing the other person, upset. How things are different today. But Imam Shafii, he held the hand of those who differed with him. Another famous statement of Imam Shafii, rahimahullah, rahmatullah alayh, he said, if a person is too introverted, then the people will have enmity towards him. And if he's too extroverted, then he will end up having bad companions. So a person should follow a middle path, a moderate way. So he's teaching moderation, that one should not be away from the people, and that will create enmity, and he should not always be amongst people until the extent that he has company with evil people, but he should follow, he said, be in between. And another thing that Imam Shafii, he said, rahmatullah alayhi, he said that sometimes a wise person has to be deaf. And what he meant by that is, a wise person, he has to ignore a lot of things. Don't be upset by criticism or by enmity when people say harsh words, or they attack a person or they criticize a person. He said, just ignore it. A wise person, sometimes you just act like you didn't hear something. That's better for you. That's better for a wise person. Like the enemies and the critics, just pretend you didn't hear it. That was one of his wise statements. A wise person will ignore a lot of things. And the Prophet ﷺ, this is mentioned in some hadith, that he praised an Imam that will come from the Quraysh. And he said in a hadith, a scholar of the Quraysh will fill the earth with knowledge. And the ulama, they agree that this was Imam Shafii. He was the scholar from the Quraysh. The other great Imams, they were not from the Quraysh tribe. And Imam Ahmad, rahmatullah alayhi, he says that the Mujaddid, the Prophet ﷺ said, indeed, Allah will send on the head of every 100 years somebody to renew this religion. And he said the one who renewed the religion at the end of the 2nd century was Imam Shafii. There's complete agreement about it. The 1st century, you know who it was? The first Mujaddid, the first 100 years? Anybody know that after the first 100 years, there was somebody Allah sent, he renewed the religion. The Mujaddid, yes? Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. And then at the end of the 2nd century, Imam Shafii, rahmatullah alayhi. And this is agreement of the ulama that he was the one that did that. Also about the piety of Imam Ash-Shafii, some advice that he gave. He used to advise the Muslims that after learning the Sharia, they should also learn other sciences, like even he said medicine and other things, because he felt that it wasn't right that the kings of those times, the rulers, they had the Christian and Jewish doctors, and he didn't feel this was right. He said that the Muslims, they should be strong, they should be able to also take care of themselves, and he felt that they should also advance in these sciences as well. Another beautiful narration, Ibn Rahawayh. Ibn Rahawayh was a great scholar, and it's narrated that he married a woman and he didn't love her at all. Why did he marry her? Can you guess why? Very close. She was previously married to a man who had a lot of the books of Imam Shafii. So when her husband passed away, she inherited his books. So Ibn Rahawayh, he proposed to her because he wanted to get those books that she had in her possession of Imam Shafii's great works. And in those days, books were so valuable. They were so valuable. And even they say that a lot of Imam Shafii's works have been lost. A lot of them, that we don't even find them today, they've been lost. But Imam al-Bayhaqi, rahimahullah alayhi, he compiled a lot of what he found from Imam al-Shafi'i's letters. They said, لولا البيحقي لضاع علم الشافعي. If it wasn't for Imam al-Bayhaqi, the knowledge of Imam Shafi'i would have been lost. So Imam al-Bayhaqi, he has a great virtue in compiling that. Imam Shafi'i, he had a tremendous amount of fiqh of the Quran. And one of the rulings, to give you an example, when two non-Muslims, like a Christian or Jewish or any religion, they accept Islam, do they have to do a new marriage contract if they're married, like a husband-wife? Say two Christians, they came and they took their shahada. Do they have to have a new marriage contract to renew it in Islam? Why not? Yes, this was Imam Shafi'i made this istinbat. That we all know the surah, when Allah says, Tabbat yada Abi Lahabin wa tab, cursed be Abu Lahab. In that surah, Allah calls the wife of Abu Lahab وَامْرَأَتُهُ حَمَّالَةَ الْحَطَبِ. His wife is carrying, in Arabic, imra'atu, when you say imra'atu fulan, it means the wife of so-and-so. So, the marriage between Abu Lahab and his wife, Allah in the Quran described her as the wife of Abu Lahab. وَامْرَأَتُهُ حَمَّالَةَ الْحَطَبِ. That the wife of Abu Lahab is carrying the wood. So this means that she was a wife according to the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he derived that kind of ruling from the Quran, such as a very concise ruling. Also about Imam Shafi'i is that he fought jihad fi sabilillah. He went to Alexandria and he was stationed in the garrison there, and he defended Alexandria is on the Mediterranean coast, and he fought fi sabilillah to defend Egypt from the invaders coming in Alexandria. So he combined knowledge and practice, the theory and the practice. He was mujahid fi sabilillah. Also Imam Shafi'i, very interesting, very beautiful story. When he came to Egypt, one of the students, one of the great Maliki scholars in Egypt, he met Imam Shafi'i. His name was Abdullah ibn al-Hakam. Ibn Abdul Hakam. He was one of the scholars in Egypt. He was a Maliki scholar, so he met Imam Shafi'i. And he told Imam Shafi'i, he said, you want to stay in Egypt a long time? You want to have a good stay here? He said, two things you have to do. This is a great Imam giving the advice. He said, number one, you have to get a sitting with one of the sultans, one of the powerful people here. Have some sitting with him, have some, audience with him on a regular basis. Number two, he said, save 1 year's worth of food. Because in Egypt you have a lot of famines and so on. So what did Imam Shafi'i say? Did he say, okay, I'm going to meet the sultans? And he said, no. He told this to Ibn Abdul Hakam. He said, know that izzah is in taqwa of Allah. If you want honor, it's through the taqwa of Allah. And he said, and know that I was a child, and with my mother we had no food saved. But there was never a night we went to bed with an empty stomach. Allah provided for us. So Imam Shafi'i, he's telling the great Imam in Egypt, he said, you want izzah? It's not with the sultan, it's with the taqwa of Allah. And he said, the food, Allah will take care of it, inshallah. Subhanallah. How much yaqeen Imam Shafi'i, rahmatullah alayhi, he had. Also, Imam Shafi'i, they said he used to pray 1/3 of the night. This is what's narrated. He prayed 1/3 every night. But during that, he would pray, read 50 ayahs in each rak'ah for the 1/3 of the night. But during that recitation, they said he would stop at every ayah and make dua. And he would be affected by the Quran, calling on Allah, be saved from the punishment, asking for the rewards. He had so much connection with the Quran, and he would cry to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the people, they said about Imam Shafi'i, rahmatullah alayhi, especially in Egypt, they said that there is no one more arwa, more pious in Egypt than Imam Shafi'i. Egypt had Sufyan al-Thawri. Egypt had many, many great scholars. But they said there's no one that has more piety than Imam Shafi'i. He was the arwa. He had so much taqwa, so much piety from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, Imam Shafi'i, rahmatullah alayhi, He was a great Imam that filled the dunya with knowledge. He had so much piety, he had so much taqwa, so much love for knowledge. He left behind so much wealth of knowledge. He left behind Imam Ahmad. That was one of his greatest students. He combined fiqh and hadith. And he also combined some aspects of qiyas with ilm al-hadith. That was a great, huge contribution. And he spread his knowledge like a sun filling the earth with light. He founded one of the greatest madahib. He's the founder of the madhab Imam Shafii. His students remain everywhere in the world, especially today in Egypt, in Syria, in many Muslim lands. He has many great students. 1200 years later, we remember Imam Shafii for the light of knowledge that he spread, the effort that he made to spread Islam throughout the earth. May Allah be pleased with him. May Allah have mercy on him. May Allah make more future Imams like him, inshaAllah ta'ala, and make us follow in his example, and let us benefit from his effort, and may Allah raise his rank in Jannah and give him the highest firdaus, and let us join with him and all the righteous and noble people, inshaAllah. May Allah have mercy on all of our scholars and let us follow in their footsteps, inshaAllah. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Is there any questions? Yes.
Is it true that Shafii had both madhab before which one is currently being followed?
Okay. This is a question about the madhab, Imam Ahmad, the madhab al-qadim and madhab al-jadid. When Imam Shafii was in Yemen and in Iraq, he had what they call madhab al-qadim. And then when he went to Egypt, they call it madhab al-jadid, something newer. And these are both mentioned in the text, in the Shafi'i text. Like to say, ala madhab al-qadim, his previous ruling was this, and his latter ruling in Egypt was a different ruling. So they're both, you find them mentioned in the text, but one does not cancel out the other. One view or one madhab doesn't cancel out the other. By the way, in the Malikis in Egypt, they were very amazed by Imam Shafii. They were amazed by his knowledge, and they were greatly affected by it. Because they saw what he was combining, the knowledge of like he said when he went to Egypt, that I want to bring them the Hanafi, the qiyas of the Ahnaf, and the hadith, the knowledge of hadith of Imam Malik, that he was able to combine that. So he was able to combine elements of qiyas with hadith and fiqh, and because his time with Muhammad Shaybani, he also was affected by that. So this is all part of the madhab of Imam Shafi'i. They mention both in the books of fiqh. But I think the mu'tamad, when you look into a school of law, the view or the position of the school of law is not always the same as the position of the Imam. Because the Imam, he's the founder in terms of the principles of the law, the students that follow his methodology. But oftentimes the students will also use his methodology but arrive at a different conclusion, or within the madhab there might be more than one view attributed to the Imam. So there's later scholars that they do the tarjih. They say that this is the more correct or dominant view in the madhab. And one of the most famous mujtahid murajjah in the Shafi school, you know who he is? Imam Nawawi. So when we look at Imam Nawawi, he's pretty much one of the main proponents or one of the main propagators of the Shafi madhab, and he does the tarjih between the different positions of Imam Shafi rahimahullah. Jazakallahu khair. Yes, any other questions, inshallah? Yes.
Memory thing is the poem about that, right?
Yes. That's one of the very beautiful poems of Imam Shafi that will give you a sense of how he would combine fiqh and knowledge of Arabic language into such beautiful language. And so they say that Imam Shafii once he saw the ankle of a woman and it affected his memory. And so he complained to his teacher, Waqi', was one of his shuyukh. So he went to him and he said in his poetry, he says, شكوت إلى وكيء سوء حفظي فأرشدني إلى ترك المعاصي وقال إن العلم نور وَنُورُ اللَّهِ لَا يُهْدَى لِعَاصِي. I complained to Waqi' about my bad memory. So he told me, you have to stop sinning. Because knowledge is a light from Allah. It's a nur from Allah. It's a nur. And nur Allah, the light of Allah, is not given to the evildoer, the wrongdoer. Nur Allah la yuhda li'asi. Knowledge is not just memorizing facts, but it's also combining that with knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a light that Allah puts in the heart. And this is why Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he says, maybe we'll talk about it in the future, he says, I read 100 books of tafsir on an ayah, 100 ayahs, 100 books of tafsir. Can you imagine? 100 tafasir of one ayah. But he said, it wasn't until I went in sajda and I started making dua to Allah, oh, ya mu'allimu Dawood allimni, ya mufahhimu Sulaiman fahimni. Oh, the one who taught Dawood, teach me. Oh, the one who gave understanding to Sulaiman, give me understanding. He said, only then I understood truly the ayah. So this is a beautiful poem of Imam Shafii rahmatullah alayhi, which is a good reminder for all of us, including myself, about the importance of knowledge and how it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how we have to ask it from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshaAllah ta'ala. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ اللَّهِ. So Allah says in the Quran, fear Allah and Allah will teach you. SubhanAllah, just connecting his mother, how she made this istinbat about the two women giving witness, and how such a righteous child came from her loins. This is inshallah, shows us the importance of having, a righteous wife, and a noble woman, and how a noble woman can raise a great scholar, and the great scholar will raise a whole ummah. So the importance of women learning the religion also, and being knowledgeable of the religion. Sisters, have any questions? Sisters in the back, is there any questions? This is very important for sisters also to learn about Islam, because you see the effect that the wisdom. Imam Shafii's mother brought him from Gaza to Mecca. She was so knowledgeable. And then not only that, she sent him to Hudayl, to the tribes, to learn Arabic, and she sent him to the teachers, and she didn't have money to pay them, but she was able to convince them, or he was able to convince them that he was deserving of learning, and he taught the classes as to pay for, subsidize his teaching. And so subhanAllah, the righteous woman has a very, very important role. What is the poem in Arabic? Al-imra'atu salihah, al-mar'atu ummah, in adadtaha adadta sha'abun tayyib al-iraqi. Al-umma madrasatun. Does that say it again? أيوة أحسن جزاك الله خير. The mother is this Shafi? I don't know if this is, no, this is probably someone else. A mother is, oh yes, the mother is a madrasa. The mother is a school. If you prepare her, then you will prepare a people, a nation who will have deep roots, good roots, strong roots. And this is what our ummah needs today. Honorable brothers and sisters in Islam, when we talk about heroes of Islam, it's not just to be proud of their history, but actually for us to take them as role models for our children, for our youth, to look up to them and to follow their footsteps. Not people who have no contribution. The singers and dancers and these people today, the famous people, they have no contribution to history. Nothing. They will have no effect on the future. But these are the people that are hanging on the walls, and they're using as role models for our youth. And this is done unfortunately, so we have to, inshallah, in order for us to prepare our coming generation, our youth, we have to show them these shining lights, these stars, these great examples, so that they can look up to them and love them and follow their footsteps, and they can be their heroes, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakallah khair. Allah yabarak feek. Yes, any other question on the madhab of Shafi'i? And yes, Fadl? Naam?
Shafi'i, where are you from?
Imam Shafi'i, he was born in Gaza, and some scholars say Asqalan, which is also in Palestine area. So he was born in Sham, in Palestine, but his actually Qurashi. He's from the Quraysh tribe. The way that he ended up in Gaza is that Hisham, the Banu Hashim he went to Syria to do some trading, and he had some children there. So he actually is from the same tribe as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's from the same lineage that goes back to Hashim, inshallah. So this is why when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said there will be an Imam from the Quraysh, he will fill the earth with knowledge, the scholars, they all agree it was Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah. Jazakallah khair. Barakallahu feek. Yes, any other questions? Sisters? Khair, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Jazakallah khair. Next week, inshallah, we'll have another great Imam or hero. We'll talk about them, inshallah. And please bring your families and your youth, your wives, inshallah. This is very important for all of them to learn these things. And tell your family when you go home, they wouldn't, mention some things about Imam Shafi'i or any of the Imams. So be role models for our women and our children and our families. May Allah bring many more righteous scholars in our ummah, and inshallah help us follow on the footsteps of our pious predecessors. وجزاكم الله خير والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بارك الله فيك. جزاك الله خير. Not time at all. By the way, these four madahib, are these the only four mujtahid imams that existed? The four madahib that we have, Shafi, Ahmad, Abu Hanifa and Malik, are these the only mujtahid imams that existed? There was others, right? Tabari, Imam Ibn Jarir Tabari, he was considered mujtahid imam, and he had a madhab, he had followers. And Imam al-Awza'i in Sham, in Syria, his was the main madhab until the 5th century in Syria, Imam al-Awza'i. But for some reason Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destined that they didn't have enough students, they didn't have, like Bayhaqi, what we learned about today. If it wasn't for Imam Bayhaqi, the books of Shafi would have been lost. His letters that he wrote, they would have all been lost. So subhanAllah, it was the destiny of Allah that Allah chose these imams and allowed their knowledge to spread and continue. Subhanallah. So we're very fortunate to